I believe nothing happens that is intrinsically bad or good. It's your ability to adjust and adapt that matters, and value can be found in the poorest of experiences. In this case, an old man with nothing but words enriched a boy, sparked a thirst for knowledge that was always there, just needing the right spark and the right moment so the child would be receptive. If you can't see beyond the surface, then you might miss something that could redefine your life and set you on a new path that is far more richer than the one that you had. SOF 6-2. While Haram Arabas, son of Hashem, was still a beardless youth, taking his pleasure among the riches and splendor of his father's house, a wise man came from a faraway land. He came not as a great man riding with a rich caravan, but weary-footed, begging water and food. These were not denied him, and while he sat in the shade, slacking his thirst and satisfying his hunger, Haram, the youth, came up to him with courteous greetings. The wise man was pleased and poured out words like jewels, so that the young man became filled with the desire for wisdom and truth, swearing that from that day forward he would devote his life to the search for them. At the time, the boy might not have realized the change taking place. However, once cut off, it's impossible to go back. Before the experience, you felt whole and complete. It's easy to be satisfied when there is nothing to compare it to. However, once awakened in you, and then you're cut off, it's like stuffing yourself back into a box that before was comfy and roomy, but now you feel as if you're suffocating. SOF 6-3. After the departure of the wise man, Haram became restless under his father's roof, and it was not long before he set off with a bundle of food and skin of water for Jerusalem. Arriving there, he slept in the house of Gebel, a servant at the temple of the winged god of fire, and from thence he journeyed towards Beth Shemesh, which lies past Tergalud, on the road to Egypt. Haram was a young man of his people, tall of stature with a darting bright-eyed glance. His long, bound hair hung low on his shoulders, and his stride was wide and firm. I want to share this to illustrate what my point is, and please understand, this is not about an agenda, only passing on a thought that was sparked by this passage. I knew I was gay for a long time before, but I believed God intended man and women, so I ignored my own issues and focused on work and helping others, mostly family, but something happened and I was alone at a time I needed someone. Came to the conclusion that God couldn't want me to be alone the rest of my life. I couldn't imagine anything worse to a woman's self-esteem than to have a guy date her and then find out he was gay, so I refused to date women, but I also believed it was wrong to be with a guy. I was going to have to discover if gay was only about sex, as I had always believed, or was it possible for love? No need to go in depth on this, just giving background. I was going to have to figure that out, and lucky for me, the internet came around. First person I met confirmed all my worst ideas about gays. But I had a date set up later. I almost canceled it, but decided to go with the flow. For that weekend, I came alive for the first time. It was awkward. We both were shy, but it was caring. Now we come to the reason for my story. On the drive back from Kansas City, about halfway, I started crying. I felt like I was suffocating. Each mile away from Kansas City, I realized how alone I was. But I took some hope that when I got home, I could contact him through AOL. This was in 1997, after all. At home, I went to my computer. It crashed. And it was my one lifeline, the only connection I had to that feeling of being alive. I broke all over again. No one around me understood what was wrong with me because I didn't understand myself. The fact was, before that day, I had no frame of reference that life could be more. Afterwards, in the car, I was mentally preparing myself for the old life, but I now understood how limiting that life was, and I found I could no longer fit in that box. In a week, I upended everything. I came out to my oldest sister first because I felt she was most likely not to go crazy on me, and I needed an easy first time on dealing with this. Not because I was ashamed or in doubt as to whether I was doing the right thing or not, or whether it was wrong or right. I just didn't want to hurt anybody. My happiness should not rest on the destruction of another person's peace of mind. I then told my mom I lived with her. I no longer wanted any part of my life in darkness, so she had to know. Sadly, I think I scared the heck out of the person I finally felt safe enough to deal with this. And sadly, my ignorance meant I couldn't articulate what was going on. He wasn't prepared, and honestly, I understand it. It caused me great pain, and I regret that. Lacking that wisdom, I destroyed something I valued so much. Anyway, to me, Hiram's restlessness reminded me of those events. Most of the chapter 6 is not of much value, at least not to me. It's more a story of mistakes and very little value spiritually, probably to most people. You never know, however, what value can be found until you give yourself time to live with the words and see what they stimulate in you. The writer might never have realized he was speaking to a gay man, and yet it still spoke to me.